My wife turned our family into her personal crime operation. My 15-year-old son was blackmailing her for gaming money. My 10-year-old daughter was unknowing bait, and my business customers were her hunting ground. When I secretly attended her corporate event, I discovered she wasn't just having an affair. She was running a predatory scheme that destroyed families, one trust at a time. My name is Lloyd Holbrook. I'm 45 years old, and I run a hazmat cleanup company here in Phoenix, Arizona. Not the most glamorous job, but it pays the bills, and then some. When someone dies in their apartment and isn't found for weeks, or when a meth lab explodes and leaves behind a toxic mess, they call me. I've seen things that would make most men lose their lunch, but nothing prepared me for what I was about to discover about my own wife. Brenna and I met in college. She was studying business. I was in environmental science. She had this way of lighting up a room that just drew people to her, like moths to a flame. Smart as a whip, too. After we graduated, she climbed the corporate ladder while I built my business from the ground up. We had 2 kids, Mason, who's 15 and obsessed with those damn video games, and Piper, our 10-year-old princess who still thinks her old man hung the moon. For the past year, Brenna had been working late more often. Big client, she'd say, kissing my forehead before rushing out the door. Important presentation. Her phone started buzzing at all hours. She'd smile that same charming smile and tell me it was just work stuff. Like an idiot, I believed her. The first real red flag should have been when she started dressing differently. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, perfume that cost more than my monthly truck payment. When I asked about it, she laughed it off. I'm representing the company now, Lloyd. Image matters in my line of work. Then came the business trips. Dallas, Houston, Denver. Always somewhere with potential clients. She'd come back energized, almost glowing, talking about new opportunities and partnerships. I was proud of her success, proud that my wife was making a name for herself in the corporate world. But something fell off. Call it intuition, call it 20 years of marriage, call it whatever you want. A man knows when the woman he loves is keeping secrets. The way she'd angle her phone away when texting. How she'd shower immediately after coming home from those late meetings. The subtle changes in how she looked at me, or rather, how she stopped really seeing me at all. Last month, everything came to a head when Mason confronted her about money. Our boy had been asking for cash to buy some new gaming setup, and when Brenna brushed him off, he got angry. Really angry. That's when he dropped the bomb that changed everything. I know about your secret meetings, Mom. Mason had said at dinner, his voice cold as winter. I've seen the photos on your phone. I know about the money you're hiding. The look that passed between them was electric. Not the kind of look between a mother and son, but between 2 people who shared a dangerous secret. That's when I realized I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was an outsider in my own home. I should have confronted her right then. Should have demanded answers. Instead, I made a decision that would change my life forever. I decided to secretly attend my wife's next corporate event, posing as a guest, to see what she was really up to. I had no idea I was about to witness far more than I ever expected. The Meridian Hotel in downtown Phoenix was the kind of place where people went to see and be seen. Glass elevators, marble floors, and enough gold trim to make a casino jealous. I'd driven past it 1,000 times, but never had a reason to go inside. Tonight was different. I parked 3 blocks away and walked, wearing a navy blazer I borrowed from my brother-in-law, and a name tag I'd made at a print shop that morning. David Sullivan, environmental consultant, it read. Close enough to my real job that I could talk my way through any conversation, but different enough that nobody would connect me to Lloyd Holbrook. The security guard barely glanced at me as I walked through the lobby. My hands were sweating, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. 23 years of marriage, and here I was sneaking around like some kind of private detective. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt like it took forever. When those doors opened, I stepped into a world I didn't recognize. The ballroom was all soft lighting and expensive decorations. Men in $1,000 suits talking business, while beautiful women in cocktail dresses laughed at their jokes. This wasn't the kind of corporate event Brenna usually described. Then I saw her. My wife was standing near the bar, but she wasn't the woman who kissed me goodbye that morning. This version of Brenna was radiant, confident, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. Her hair was different, her makeup perfect, and she was laughing at something a tall, dark-haired man, was whispering in her ear. The man wasn't from her company. I met most of her colleagues over the years, and this guy was a stranger. Mid-40s, expensive watch, the kind of confident smile that said he was used to getting whatever he wanted. And right now, what he wanted was my wife. I grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and moved closer, staying behind a group of executives discussing oil prices. The man had his hand on Brenna's lower back, and she wasn't pulling away. If anything, she was leaning into him. "Marcus, you're terrible," Brenna said, her voice carrying that flirty tone I remembered from our college days. "What if someone sees us?" "Marcus," not a name I'd ever heard her mention. "Let them see," Marcus replied, his voice smooth as silk. "We're not hiding anymore, remember? Tonight's about celebrating our partnership." Partnership. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the cocktail table next to them was a small stack of business cards. I couldn't read them from where I stood, but I could see a logo I didn't recognize. This wasn't just about an affair. There was something bigger happening here. A waiter approached them with a tray, and I heard Brenna say something that stopped my world from spinning. "Has Lloyd suspected anything yet?" Marcus asked quietly. Brenna shook her head, taking a sip of wine. "My husband's too busy with his little cleanup business to notice what's really going on. He trusts me completely." The way she said little cleanup business, like my life's work was something to be ashamed of, cut deeper than any knife. I should have walked away right then. Should have left that hotel and confronted her at home. Instead, I stayed hidden and kept watching, because I had a feeling this was just the beginning of whatever game my wife was playing. What happened next will haunt me for the rest of my life. Marcus guided Brenna toward a small stage at the far end of the ballroom. I followed at a distance, weaving between clusters of guests, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. A microphone sat on a stand, and Marcus tapped it twice to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced, his voice carrying across the room, "if I could have your attention for just a moment." The chatter died down as people turned toward the stage. I positioned myself behind a tall floral arrangement, close enough to hear but hidden from view. "Tonight, we're celebrating more than just successful business ventures," Marcus continued. "We're celebrating partnerships that go beyond the boardroom." He gestured to Brenna, who stepped forward with that radiant smile I used to think was reserved just for me. "I'd like you all to meet my business partner, and so much more, Brenna Holbrook," Marcus said, "the woman who's helped me build something extraordinary." The crowd applauded politely, but I felt like I was drowning. Business partner? When had my wife become anyone's business partner? Brenna took the microphone, her voice clear and confident. "Thank you, Marcus. 6 months ago, we started something that most people said was impossible. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that Apex Consulting has secured its largest client yet, a multi-million-dollar contract that will change everything." Apex Consulting. I never heard of it. My wife had her own company, and I didn't even know it existed. To my partner in business and in life, Brenna raised her champagne glass toward Marcus. "Thank you for showing me what real success looks like." They kissed. Right there on stage, in front of 50 people, my wife kissed another man like I didn't exist. The applause was thunderous. People were cheering, raising their glasses, celebrating my wife's betrayal like it was the greatest thing they'd ever witnessed. That's when disaster struck. As I stepped backward in shock, I bumped into a waiter carrying a tray of wine glasses. The crash was spectacular, glass shattering, wine splashing, the sound echoing through the suddenly quiet ballroom. Every head turned toward me, including Brenna's. Our eyes met across that crowded room, and I watched her face go from triumph to terror in the span of a heartbeat. She knew she'd been caught. More importantly, she knew that I now understood this wasn't just an affair. "Lloyd," she whispered into the microphone, her voice barely audible. Marcus followed her gaze and saw me standing there, covered in wine and surrounded by broken glass. His confident smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Well," Marcus said smoothly, taking the microphone back for Brenna, "it seems we have an unexpected guest. Ladies and gentlemen, Brenna's husband has decided to join our celebration." The way he said, "husband," made it sound like a dirty word, like I was some kind of inconvenience that had wandered into their perfect evening. I should have run, should have walked out of that ballroom and driven straight home. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I started walking toward the stage. Every step toward that stage felt like walking through quicksand. The crowd parted as I approached, some people whispering, others just staring like I was some kind of circus act. My shoes crunched on broken glass, and I could feel wine dripping from my blazer. When I reached the stage, Marcus extended his hand like we were old friends meeting at a barbecue. "Lloyd, isn't it?" Marcus said, his voice dripping with false warmth. "Brenna's told me so much about you." I looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment, then back at his face. "Wish I could say the same about you." The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Marcus's smile never faltered, but his eyes went hard. "Lloyd, what are you doing here?" Brenna stepped down from the stage, her voice urgent and low. "This isn't what it looks like." I almost laughed. "Really? Because it looks like my wife just announced she's in business with her boyfriend in front of a room full of strangers." "Partner," Marcus corrected smoothly. "Brenna and I are business partners. Nothing more. Business partners who kiss on stage and call each other partners in life." I shot back. "What kind of business are we talking about here?" Brenna grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to leave bruises. "Lloyd, please. Not here. Not like this." "Where then, Brenna? At home while you lie to my face some more? In front of our kids while you pretend to be someone you're not?" "That at home." I saw her flinch, saw the guilt flash across her face before she got control of herself again. "Your kids," Marcus interjected, and there was something dangerous in his tone. "Are they as dramatic as their father?" Wrong thing to say. Dead wrong. I stepped closer to Marcus, close enough that he had to crane his neck to look up at me. "You want to repeat that?" "Lloyd, stop," Brenna hissed, but I wasn't listening anymore. "See, here's the thing, Marcus," I said, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "I've spent the last 20 years cleaning up after people who made really bad decisions. I've seen what happens when someone thinks they're smarter than everyone else around them." Marcus tried to step back, but the stage was behind him. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding is that my wife thought she could play house with you while keeping me as her safety net," I continued. "But here's what you both forgot. I might clean up messes for a living, but I also know how to make them." The threat hung in the air between us. I wasn't sure what I meant by it myself, but Marcus clearly got the message. His confident demeanor slipped just enough for me to see the calculating mind underneath. "Lloyd, we can discuss this like civilized adults," Marcus said carefully. "Civilized?" I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "There's nothing civilized about what you've done to my family." I turned to Brenna, who was pale as a ghost. "We're going home. Now. And you're going to explain to me exactly what Apex Consulting really is, and why our 15-year-old son knows about money you're hiding." For the first time all evening, Brenna looked like the woman I married, uncertain, vulnerable, caught. "Lloyd, it's complicated." "Then you better start talking, because simple or complicated, this ends tonight." The ride home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Brenna sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window like she could disappear if she concentrated hard enough. Neither of us spoke until we pulled into our driveway. "Lloyd, I can explain," she started. "Not here." I cut her off. "Inside. Away from the neighbors." Our house looked exactly the same as when we'd left it, but everything felt different. The family photos on the walls, the couch where we'd watched countless movies together, even the kitchen table where we'd eaten thousands of meals. All of it felt like props in someone else's life. Mason was in the living room, controller in hand, focused on his game. He looked up when we walked in, and I saw something flash across his face. Not surprise, recognition, like he'd been expecting this moment. "Piper's asleep," Mason said quietly. "Been in bed since 9. Thank God for small mercies. Our 10-year-old didn't need to witness whatever was about to happen." "Mason, go to your room," I said. "Dad, I think I should." "Room. Now." Something in my voice must have convinced him this wasn't the time to argue. Mason disappeared upstairs, but I noticed he left his bedroom door cracked open. Smart kid. Brenna and I stood in our living room like strangers waiting for a bus. She'd changed out of that red dress into jeans and a sweater, trying to look like the woman I married. But I could still see traces of the other Brenna, the confident, calculating woman who'd kissed another man on stage. "Apex Consulting," I said finally. "Start talking." Brenna sat down on the edge of the couch, Her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. It's a legitimate business, Lloyd. Marcus and I help companies streamline their operations. By doing what exactly? She hesitated, and in that pause, I heard everything she wasn't saying. We gather information about competitors. Market research, due diligence, that sort of thing. And the kissing? That part of your market research, too. Her face flushed red. That was... Marcus gets carried away sometimes. The business has been so successful, and tonight was a celebration. A celebration you didn't invite your husband to. I didn't think you'd be interested. Corporate events aren't your thing. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Right, because I'm just a guy who cleans up messes. Too stupid to understand real business. I never said that. You didn't have to. I started pacing, my hands clenched in a fist. Tell me about the money, Brenna. The money Mason knows about. Her face went pale. What did he tell you? Enough. So start explaining, because right now I'm trying really hard not to lose my temper in front of our kids. For the first time that night, Brenna looked genuinely afraid. And she should have been, because I was done being the understanding husband who cleaned up after everyone else's mistakes. The money isn't hidden, Brenna said finally. It's just separate from our household accounts. How separate? And how much are we talking about? She was quiet for so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. About $400,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. 400. Brenna, what the hell have you been doing? Marcus and I have been very successful. Apex Consulting has clients all over the Southwest. We provide specialized services that companies are willing to pay premium rates for. What kind of specialized services? Another pause. Another lie being carefully constructed. Intelligence gathering, she said carefully. Corporate espionage, if you want to call it that. Companies pay us to find out what their competitors are planning, who they're targeting, what their weaknesses are. Corporate espionage. My wife was a spy, and Mason knows about this. Mason discovered some documents a few months ago. He was smart enough to put two and two together. Brenna's voice got defensive. He's been asking for money for his gaming equipment, and I thought it would be easier to just give him what he wanted rather than have him ask questions. So you've been bribing our son to keep quiet about your criminal activity. It's not criminal, Brenna snapped, then caught herself and lowered her voice. Everything we do is legal. Aggressive, maybe, but legal. What about Marcus? How long have you been sleeping with him? The question hung in the air between us. I watched my wife's face carefully, looking for the tell that would let me know she was about to lie again. 6 months, she said finally. It started as business, Lloyd. Marcus needed someone who could blend into corporate environments, someone who could gather information without raising suspicion. A married woman with a stable home life was perfect cover. Perfect cover. That's what our marriage had become, cover for my wife's double life. So everything we've built together, everything we've shared, it's all been fake. Not fake, Brenna said quickly. Just complicated. I never meant for it to go this far with Marcus. But the work is exciting, the money is incredible, and he makes me feel... What? What does he make you feel? She looked me straight in the eye. Alive. Important. Like I'm capable of more than just being a wife and mother. Those words cut deeper than anything else she could have said, because I realized that somewhere along the way, I'd stopped seeing my wife as anything more than exactly that, a wife and mother. I've been so focused on building my business and providing for our family that I'd forgotten the woman I fell in love with needed more than just security. But that didn't excuse what she'd done. And it sure as hell didn't excuse dragging our children into it. Where do we go from here, Brenna? I don't know, she admitted. I honestly don't know. The next morning, Brenna acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, kissed my cheek, and headed off to work like she hadn't just confessed to corporate espionage and adultery the night before. I waited 30 minutes after she left, then went straight to her home office. The room looked normal at first glance, desk, computer, filing cabinets. But now I knew what to look for. I started with the desk drawers, searching for anything that might explain Apex Consulting. Third drawer down, hidden under old tax returns, I found a manila folder marked Phoenix Operations. Inside were client profiles, payment schedules, and something that made my blood freeze, photos of me. Not family photos, surveillance photos. Me leaving the house, at job sites, talking to customers. Someone had been watching me for months. Mason appeared in the doorway. Dad, what are you doing? Learning the truth about your mother. I held up one of the photos. Did you know about this? Mason's face went pale. She said it was for insurance purposes. In case something happened to you at work. Son, these are surveillance photos. Someone's been following me. Mason sat down heavily in the chair across from the desk. Dad, there's more you don't know. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small recording device. Mom's been having me record conversations when your customers call the house. She said it was to help with scheduling, but play it. The recording was from last week. Jim Morrison calling about delays on his truck modifications due to cash flow problems. I remember the conversation. Jim was stressed about his business struggling. She made copies. Mason continued quietly. Said the information might be useful someday. My wife wasn't just cheating. She was using our home, our family, our children to gather intelligence on my customers. People who trusted me. Mason, I need you to show me everything. Every recording, every photo, every conversation she asked you to remember. For the next hour, my 15-year-old son revealed the extent of his mother's operation. She'd been systematically collecting information about my business relationships, my customers' financial situations, even their personal problems. Dad, I'm sorry. I thought I was helping the family business. You were protecting yourself, son. I understand. I pulled him into a hug. But now we need to protect everyone else. I made a decision that would change everything. Pack a bag. You and Piper are going to stay with Uncle Mike for a few days. What about you? I'm going to finish where your mother started. But I'm going to do it right. After the kids left for Mike's house, I called my lawyer, then my accountant, then someone I never thought I'd need, a private investigator. Tom Bradley was an ex-cop who specialized in corporate investigations. Within 2 hours, he was sitting in my kitchen, looking through the evidence Mason and I had collected. This is bigger than corporate espionage, Tom said grimly. This looks like organized fraud. Your wife and her partner are running confidence schemes targeting business owners. What kind of schemes? Classic setup. They gather intelligence, identify vulnerable targets, then either blackmail them or manipulate them into bad business decisions. The victims lose money, property, sometimes entire companies. Tom showed me documents I'd missed. Financial records showing Apex Consulting had acquired assets from at least 6 failed businesses in the past year. Jim Morrison's company is next. I realized. That's why Brenna wanted information about his financial troubles. Probably. The pattern fits. They identify a struggling business, gather inside information, then orchestrate its collapse while positioning themselves to acquire valuable assets at bankruptcy prices. I felt sick. My customers trusted me with their problems, and I'd unknowingly fed that information to predators. What's our move? Tom leaned back in his chair. Legally, we gather more evidence, contact the FBI, and hope they can build a case. That could take months, maybe years. What's the other option? You give them exactly what they want, but on your terms. We set up a controlled scenario where they incriminate themselves. I thought about Jim Morrison, about all my customers who were vulnerable, about Mason being used as a spy in his own home, about Piper growing up thinking this was normal. Set it up. Tom nodded. I'll need you to act normal for a few more days. Can you do that? I've been cleaning up toxic messes for 20 years, Tom. I know how to handle dangerous situations. This isn't chemical waste, Lloyd. These people have money, connections, and a lot to lose. If they suspect you're onto them, then I better make sure they don't suspect anything until it's too late. That afternoon, I called Brenna and told her I was taking a big job that would require me to be out of town for a week. A story about cleaning up after an industrial accident in Nevada. That's wonderful, honey, she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. Take all the time you need. Of course she was relieved. With me gone, she could move freely, accelerate whatever plan she had for Jim Morrison and the others. What she didn't know was that I'd be watching every move from a surveillance van parked 2 blocks away. The hunt was about to begin. Wednesday evening, Tom and I watched from the surveillance van as Brenna and Marcus entered the downtown office building where they'd arranged to meet Jim Morrison. The building was mostly empty after business hours, perfect for what they had planned. Audio's clear, Tom reported, adjusting his headphones. They're setting up in conference room B. Through the van's monitors, I could see Jim arriving, briefcase in hand, looking like a man about to sign his life away. He had no idea the investment opportunity was actually a sophisticated theft. Recording everything, Tom confirmed. When this is over, we'll have enough evidence to put them away for years. I watched my wife transform into her predator persona. The gentle woman who made breakfast that morning had become someone cold, calculating, ruthless. She presented documents with practiced efficiency, while Marcus played the sympathetic investor. Mr. Morrison, these papers will restructure your debt and provide immediate capital injection, Brenna explained smoothly. All we need is your signature transferring operational control as collateral. Jim hesitated, studying the contracts. This seems like I'm signing over my entire business. Temporary measure, Marcus assured him. Standard procedure for high-risk investments. You'll retain ownership while we handle day-to-day operations. Complete lies. The contracts were designed to strip Jim of everything he'd built over 30 years. That's when I made my move. I walked into that conference room like I owned the place. The look on Brenna's face was worth everything I'd been through. Sorry I'm late, I announced, setting down my own briefcase. Mr. Morrison, I'm Lloyd Holbrook, the private investigator you hired to review these contracts. Jim played his part perfectly. We'd rehearsed this scenario for hours. Mr. Holbrook, what did you find? I opened my briefcase and spread out copies of everything Tom and I had discovered. Bank records, communication transcripts, evidence of previous victims. I found that these people have defrauded at least 6 other business owners using identical contracts, I said calmly. Mrs. Holbrook, yes, that's my wife, and Mr. Marcus are part of an organized criminal enterprise. Marcus started to stand, but I was faster. 20 years of handling dangerous situations gave me an edge he didn't expect. Sit down, I commanded, and something in my voice made him comply. Brenna stared at me with a mixture of shock and calculation. Lloyd, you don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly. You've been using our children to spy on my customers. You've been running confidence schemes. You've been stealing from good people. This is a private business meeting, Marcus said weakly. Not anymore. FBI agents are waiting outside. Mr. Morrison's wearing a wire. Everything you've said tonight has been recorded. The color drained from both their faces as Tom walked in, badge visible. Brenna Holbrook, Marcus Davidson, you're under arrest. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new office, watching Mason and Piper play in the yard through the window. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago. Brenna pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. She got 8 years. Marcus received 12 years. Turned out he had prior convictions in 2 other states. The kids were doing better than I'd expected. Mason had been in therapy, working through the guilt of being manipulated by his mother. Piper was resilient in the way only 10-year-olds can be, accepting that sometimes parents make terrible mistakes. Dad, there's someone here to see you, Mason called from the front door. Jim Morrison walked into my office, grinning from ear to ear. Lloyd, I wanted to thank you again. The FBI recovered most of the money they stole from those other businesses. Some of those families are getting their lives back. You don't need to thank me, Jim. I should apologize. If I'd been paying attention. Stop right there. Jim interrupted. You saved my business, and probably my family. That woman fooled everyone, including her own husband. He was right. Brenna had been living a double life for years, becoming someone I never would have married if I'd known who she really was. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom Bradley. New case if you're interested. Corporate investigation, good money. I'd started working with Tom's firm, using my knowledge of hazmat cleanup and industrial processes to investigate corporate crimes. Turns out there was a market for someone who understood both legitimate business operations and criminal schemes. Dad, Piper appeared in the doorway. Can we get pizza tonight? Absolutely, princess. Mason, you want to invite Uncle Mike and the cousins? Already texted them. Mason grinned. They'll be here at 6. After Jim left, I stood in my backyard watching my kids laugh and play like normal children should. The house was smaller than our old place, but felt bigger somehow. Cleaner. Honest. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Holbrook? This is Detective Sarah Wilson in Denver. I understand you helped expose the Apex Consulting fraud. We have a similar case here, and we could use your expertise. I smiled, watching Mason teach Piper how to throw a football properly. Detective Wilson, I'd be happy to help. When do you need me? The work was just beginning. There were more Brennas out there, more Marcus Davidsons running schemes that destroyed families and businesses. But now I knew how to spot them, how to stop them. And most importantly, I knew that sometimes cleaning up the biggest messes means starting over completely. My name is Lloyd Holbrook. I'm 45 years old, and I finally know exactly who I am.